Chicago is on ice, literally. Federal agents recently raided an apartment building on the south side of Chicago, and they took 37 migrants into custody. And the reaction is mixed. Some black residents are crying racism. Others are saying that they're finally seeing what they should have been seeing all along, which was protection. But it had to come from the federal government, because the local government refused to do the job. In this video, we're going to look at what happened, what are the consequences, and how the actual Chicago residents in this raid, how they feel.
If Sunday's stroll by Border Patrol downtown was mostly show, this raid in South Shore proved they also go. With a helicopter circling overhead, heavily armed agents stormed an apartment building. Inside, they went door to door in what Border Patrol describes as a targeted operation.
They went through that structure, which is a very large structure. You can see it's 5 stories. They went through that structure a lot quicker than I thought, and several apprehensions. It looks like we have a couple of potential targets that we briefed earlier today that we were after.
Immigration authorities have not released specific charging information against anyone taken into custody, which is why we've blurred their faces. The mission commander says their targets were members of the Venezuelan gang known as Tren de Aragua, but he acknowledges some U.S. citizens were briefly detained.
We generally don't determine alienage while we're in that building, clearing the building. It's too dangerous, so we'll bring them out and do it in a safe environment. It's safer for the United States citizens and safer for the illegal aliens, and most of all, safer for our officers. We're not violating their rights, we're making it safe for them so that they can live in a safe and secure neighborhood. And there's no rights been violated today, just the saving of lives.
The man running the show is Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino. He conducted similar operations in Los Angeles this summer.
So there you have it, people. Regardless to what you would hear from local politicians and from other individuals, that this is some racist motivated activity being carried out by ICE, they're going into this apartment complex and they're looking for Tren de Aragua. They're looking for Venezuelan gang members who, if they are here, and they are, they're not here to pick vegetables and to, wash dishes. They're going to come over here, they're going to do the things that they did from their home country. And in so doing, they're putting people like you and I in danger. But let's listen to a couple of the residents, because again, when you hear Brandon Johnson speak, and obviously he's the mayor of Chicago, he's covered a ton on this channel. When you hear him speak, you'll hear him say, nobody wants federal troops in the city of Chicago to perform this type of interdiction. Let's listen to some of what the residents said.
They just treated us like we were nothing.
Patricia Fisher says she came out to the hallway of her apartment complex on the corner of 75th and South Shore Drive in her nightgown around 10 Monday night, only to find ICE agents yelling police.
It was scary because I've never had a gun put in my face. They asked my name and my date of birth and asked me did I have any warrants, and I told them no, I didn't.
She says she was then handcuffed and released around 3 a.m. Fisher says she was told if anyone had any kind of warrant out for them, even if it was unrelated to immigration, they would not be released. Citizen-At video shows the chaotic scene overnight. Trucks and military-style vans were used to separate parents from their children. Other neighbors say they saw agents destroying property to get in the building.
And they had a big 15-inch chainsaw with a round blade on it cutting this fence down. We're under siege. We're being invaded by our own military.
So you hear those 3 accounts, and to some degree I'm sympathetic when I hear the first woman saying that she's being brought out at gunpoint and she's in her nightgown. When you hear the last gentleman say we're under siege by our own government, that's hyperbolic. I mean, if you're living in an apartment complex and you know that Venezuelan gang members are your neighbors in that apartment complex, and you hear what the federal government is saying that they're going to do, what do you think is going to happen? If you are at a store and that store is being robbed, when the police walk in and you say, hey, I'm not robbing the store, they don't say, oh, okay, continue shopping. No, they're trying to get control of the situation. They're going to make everyone, they're going to take everyone, at least detain them so they can ascertain who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. So this is just a consequence of, unfortunately, These people are poor enough that they had to cohabitate with Venezuelan gang members, and they got swept up, but they were detained and they were released. But there's another group of people who have a different take on this. Let's listen to them for a second.
Swept up in the raid, at least 2 U.S. citizens who told us everyone in the building, which amounts to dozens of tenants, were all temporarily detained until immigration agents could verify their identities.
Once I went in the hallway, it was a bunch of people in green, and they just was, lay it down, you have to go to the front. And they made everybody go to the front. Everybody went to the front, and they detained us. They put us in the little plastic wristband thingies, and they just took our information.
Isaiah Johnson says he was detained for nearly 2 hours on the sidewalk before being let go. Who got taken away?
Most of the Venezuelans.
Do you know how many of them got arrested?
No, it was a lot of them.
Johnson said he got along with most of the Venezuelan migrants who live here. He said they helped him repair his dishwasher, but not everyone agrees. Takesha Clark says her interactions were less positive, alleging that new arrivals caused damage to the building. These images, obtained by NBC5 Investigates, courtesy of the Invisible Institute, show damage on the inside, though it was not immediately clear what damage may have already existed versus what occurred during this raid.
Okay, I had to stop here for one quick second. This is sometimes where I have an issue with the mainstream media. You hear that reporter say right there, hey, they couldn't ascertain if this damage was done before the raid or if it was a consequence of the raid. So I wanted to go back and look at this still. So look at this picture. You see on the left, you see on that doorway on the left, you see a cot, you see looks like an empty water bottle, and looks like a soda can, and then you see a mop with a broken handle on it that's right there in the middle of the floor, and then you see pools of water. So my question is, do the reporters think that ICE went in there with mops and half mopped the floor and just started pouring water all over the floor? This is obviously damage that was done before the raid, not as a consequence of the raid. But even more importantly, someone was living like that at the time of the raid. Someone was living in that apartment complex in that filth. There's even, if you look right here where I've got my moist pointer right here, that looks like a bottle of Fabuloso. It looks like it, at least. You see the cardboard on the floor. Again, you see the water bottle. You see this cot. Again, the blinds back here in disrepair. Someone was living like this in this apartment. It was one of the Venezuelan people, I'm certain. They're in there destroying this apartment. I can imagine what this probably smells like. But mainstream media, reporters, you've got to do better. This, what you're looking at right here, was not a consequence of the raid.
What is your take on this enhanced immigration enforcement that we've seen here in Chicago?
I don't like the way that they did it. I'm happy as hell that they got them up out the building, but I don't like the way they came and did it.
What is it about the manner in which they did it you don't like?
Because us Americans, we didn't have nothing to do with them. We didn't bring the Venezuelans over here, they did.
Since August of 2022, more than 50,000 migrants arrived in Chicago, most of whom were bused or flown here by Texas Governor Greg Abbott. But following the closure of the city's migrant shelter system last fall, an untold number resettled in the South Shore area. Tuesday's operation appears to be the largest show of force we've seen since the Trump administration began its increased enforcement efforts here earlier this month. What do you make about what's been happening here in Chicago with the increased immigration enforcement? The arrests, like ICE arresting people in different parts of the city. What do you make of all that?
I think they should make sure it's the right people and not the wrong people.
They obviously had a finite amount of individuals from whom to choose to do this interview. But that aside, it's disappointing when people see things like this happen, like the gentleman who said that we're being invaded by our own military and turning this into something racial. I've even heard local reporters here in Chicago, accusing the Trump administration and saying, see, we told you that when they get done with the Venezuelans, when they get done with the Latinos, the black people are next. No one African American who lived in this apartment complex was targeted because they are African American or black. Those individuals were just collateral damage because they lived in the same apartment complex as the Venezuelan gangs that ICE was looking for. So please, let's not turn this into something that it isn't. You heard the woman say that, hey, they could have done it differently, but she's glad that they were apprehended because she knows how they're living in that apartment complex. She's probably had some interactions. She's seen them damage property. And most of them who are living here, they're getting some sort of subsidy from the state, or they're getting some sort of, philanthropic, contributions, because most of them, if they don't have work permits, they can't go work, or they're working under the table, what have you, so they don't have the resources. That's the whole reason why they shouldn't be here in the first place. And if we had a better immigration system, and if the previous president didn't just tell everyone, hey, get here as quickly as you can, then we wouldn't have these issues. And furthermore, if local government was doing their job, we wouldn't have these issues. But before we end this video, we have to have the obligatory race card that's played by Brandon Johnson whenever he's interviewed about situations like this. Take a look at his statement about this raid that just happened on the South Side.
Well, first of all, my heart aches for these families, right? So a little girl is being separated from her parents. We just saw on the south side of Chicago where masked armed men with long guns sticking these guns and these weapons in the faces of black residents, right? So this is an overall attack on the sensibility of our democracy. My message is very clear, that we're not going to be intimidated. And as this president is looking to stoke fear and foment chaos, we're going to remain steady and committed to protecting the residents of our city.
Oh man, Brandon Johnson, you can always count on him to throw the race card on the table. Here's a really, and you hear the way he characterized it. Men in masks and with long guns, sticking their guns in the faces of black residents. That's not what happened. It's not men in masks with long guns. It's federal agents. It's ICE agents who were going into that apartment complex looking for members of Tren de Aragua. Hey, here's an interesting point, Brandon Johnson. Why don't you have local police arrest individuals who are gang members who are here illegally, turn them over to the federal government, and then you wouldn't have the people in there with the long guns and the masks. But you don't want to do that. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say you're not going to use local resources to fortify the federal mandate that's going on to try and get these criminals out of the country. So you're not going to do that, but then turn around and complain when the federal government does their job. Immigration enforcement is a federal mandate, so it is completely appropriate that the federal government comes in and does that job. Just Brandon Johnson, just always ready to play the race card at every given turn. And then saying, oh, we're going to protect families. They're here illegally, so you don't have a mandate to protect them. So again, you can't have it both ways. You can't say on one side, you're not going to assist with the apprehension of illegal immigrants to help the federal government. You're not going to do that, but you're going to turn around as mayor and you're going to protect illegal immigrants. You're going to claim them as being under your umbrella of protection as mayor when they're here illegally. Just again, the worst mayor in the history of Chicago. If you're still hanging out, do me a favor, drop a like, drop a comment. Let's get the conversation going. But most of all, make sure you subscribe, share this video. I appreciate you for hanging out this long, and I'll catch you in the next one.